To our singers, I knew you would be a tough act to follow. Didn't know how tough an act. And I'm looking at the time. It took me twice as long to get here this morning, and all of a sudden we're nearly 3/4 of the way through our hour. Going back to the little story, the Hasidic story in the reading that Mary told us earlier, I hope that the leadership I can help provide you is a little better than the rabbi in the forest telling his flock, I can tell you where not to go, and maybe together we'll find a way. Certainly that last part is true. The song that we sang earlier, When I Am Frightened, Will You Reassure Me? We all, of really any age at all, have had times, I wager, when we have felt challenged to the core, when we wondered whether we or our understanding of things would prove sufficient for the task, challenge at hand. We continue to live that Chinese blessing, may you go first, may you live in interesting times. Every year that seems more true, at least to me. The song that we sang, the reading with which I lit our chalice this morning, talks about the secret of this all is coming together, sharing our concerns, sharing our fears, sharing what we've learned that the path that just might work, if even for a little while. So if you haven't figured out, condensing my remarks to you this morning, I hope I still will be clear. I'm thinking of a poem that was written 103 years ago this month. That used to seem like a really long time, 100 years. It feels less so now. The poem, 104 years ago, William Butler Yeats wrote perhaps his most important poem, The Second Coming, in January of 1919. Europe at the time was grappling, he was an Irish poet, Europe was grappling with the aftermath of the First World War and the so-called Spanish flu. And it's helpful to remember that the flu killed far more people across the globe than World War I had. We're talking losing worldwide roughly 12 billion people. Both Yeats's father and wife came down with the disease. And while both survived, it was touch and go for each of them. Some might call it a miracle, the fact that Yeats's wife, named George, if you want to know, was able to recover and give birth to their daughter Anne at the end of February. Political tensions were also on the rise in Ireland as well, when Yeats began his poem with these lines. Many of you, I trust, will have at least heard this before. I won't read the whole poem. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed. And everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Yeats continues, surely some revelation is at hand. He concludes, surely the second coming is at hand. Yates would, a few years later, publish a book on what he was beginning to see in 1919 as a series of history moving in 2,000-year cycles. As a Protestant in Ireland at the start of the 1900s, we can imagine the poet seeing a bleak horizon before him, especially with closest family, with the flu. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. That's the fear in a nutshell, isn't it? Will we be enough? Will our faith be strong, if not resilient enough, to see us through? The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. How many times have those words captured our sense of the world since they were first written? At least for me, more times than I care to count. How then do we steel ourselves, both as individuals and as a community of spirit, to see us through these hard, defining times and challenges? Many of my contemporaries in religious leadership would say, by sharing one another some of the stories of our lives, of what it took for us to get through the hard times, and maybe even, don't go there, that doesn't work, it's a dead end. I may have said to you that I was asked to speak to youth in the aftermath of the September 11th, 2001 attacks in the United States. I was asked to speak to youth, and so I prepared a few things to say to teenagers. But there at the public library were not teenagers, they were 5-year-olds. I had to think on my feet. I'm not sure I thought well for 5-year-olds. What I had prepared to tell the youth was that it's not sexy, it doesn't sound good, it doesn't sound convincing, but we muddle through. Almost everything we muddle through somehow. For myself, the challenging times coming into my own when my father was dying, and I was struggling what to do with my life. The divorce that caught me by surprise and made me see my dreams for what they were, just dreams. I look back and find some pinnacle moments, some moments and times that still reverberate for me. Time I jumped out of an airplane with friends, and thankfully a parachute attached to my back. Once was enough. 2 of the 4 of us went back. I was not going to tempt fate. And I think of times in religious community, and we may go a little long today, hopefully not too long, because there are 2 stories I want to share. One where I'm a player, the other just a witness. 10 or 12 years ago, a young woman in her early 30s came to me to let me know that she had experienced an unexpected and unplanned pregnancy, and it caught her by surprise, and she wanted to talk to me about what to do about it. And I helped her pose some questions for her doctor. And then when it was clear that she also needed to talk to probably an older woman who provided a little more sage advice than I could, we found someone in the congregation and they talked. I think they had several hours-long conversations. And I would check in with Kim, the woman, every now and then, but we didn't see each other very often before, and I wanted to know how the pregnancy was going, but in general terms, there wasn't that much contact. Until one morning, a cool, clear, early May morning, early spring morning, I got a phone call. Kim has given birth and would like to introduce you to her new daughter. One thing about being a minister is there are times you can say, there's a parish emergency, I have to cancel my appointments. And so I did. And I drove to St. Anne's. And for the first time in my life, I was in maternity ward. And I had seen babies days old. I didn't realize that Kyla Sage had been born just minutes before the phone call. I was in the presence of a child just an hour old when I arrived. And I'm sure that standing there next to the baby's father, at the foot of the bed as we were talking, I'm sure pleasantries and conversation was exchanged. All I remember was probably having a stupidly silly grin on my face and a tear in my eye. I have heard heterosexual people called breeders. I am a breeder who has never bred. And it is, this is no secret, the regret of my life. And yet, I don't have the energy it would take to be a parent anymore, so I have made some peace with it. But after I left that maternity room, after maybe being there 20 minutes, half hour, I got back to my car in the hospital parking lot. I sobbed for a full 20 minutes. I had been in the presence of something I never thought I might experience. The child was not my child. This wasn't that relationship. I was just a pastor. But I cried, and the best way I had of understanding it then is the best way I have of understanding it now. It felt like I had been initiated into something very important, what it means to be human, be in the presence of such an early life. I think I was initiated into a deeper sense of what it means to be human during that visit in the maternity room. I remember a professor of religious philosophy talking about when he was in the room when his wife gave birth to their first child, and how it seemed purely pragmatic and didn't feel like a spiritual experience at all. I think I was a little young when I heard that as an undergraduate. It was hard for me not to judge him negatively with that. As a romantic, imagining myself in that, I'm sure I felt that that was a miraculous event, and it needed to be big and large and reverberate. And maybe for him it wasn't. That's fine. But I know that being in the presence of that little life, that new life, changed me in very good ways. Gave me something to hold on to that was unshakable, and has helped keep my own faith alive, because I know a little bit more about how amazing life is. Another story, and I'll be quick. Congregants of mine in my internship church, Jewel and Don, sort of adopted me. Jewel became my California grandmother. And I was grateful for that, and we kept in touch over the years. And I learned later, Don's husband was a retired social worker. Jewel was a retired hospital nurse. And in the 60s, they bought a little land outside Santa Rosa, California in the Redwoods and built their own home in the Redwoods. In the 50s, you could do that in California still. And when Don turned 75, the couple had 4 children. He asked each of them what they wanted from him, and he didn't mean the legacy of the Barcalounger. 3 of them were close, lived nearby, and attended the congregation that they helped lead. And the other had sort of left the fold, a daughter named Mary, who at 16 on an airplane on the way to Europe to be an exchange student in Amsterdam, was sitting next to a man who proceeded to tell her and witness about how Jesus Christ had entered his life and brought peace to him. And being a good, upstanding, precocious Unitarian youth, Mary said to him, well, Jesus is my life. I don't have that. I'm perfectly fine. Thank you very much. When she found her place where she'd be staying, she realized that that wasn't true. She realized how much she was not at peace. After time said, well, if Jesus worked for him, maybe he'll work for me. So she prayed for the first time in her life, and she opened herself up to something new. She felt filled with love for the first time in her life. Mary went on to become an international missionary and would come back to visit the family and fundraise every summer. Don, the father, could not understand this. His own father had been I guess the phrase would be evangelical now, but when Don was growing up, he was clear that his father was of the fire and brimstone persuasion. So when Mary heard Don's offer of a gift, any gift that he would give at his 75th birthday, she said, I want to end this détente. I want to talk to you about faith. I want to have you listen to me, even though it may be difficult. And so she told her father what God was to her, source of unconditional love. And his response was out of his mouth before he even thought about it. And he said, but that's not my father's God. That never was. But it was his daughter's. He had just projected, perhaps a little too much. Over the years that remained before his death, Don and Mary had several such conversations. I don't think Don may have ever come to peace with his daughter's choices. I don't think, well, look at it this way. I think there was a limit to how much he would appreciate and understand. That at least the two were talking again about the deep things. If we are doing the work of this religious community, the work, that we're called to do, to kindle the light within and inspire courage to nurture the web of life and to create, and I have to add, help create. We can't create a better world. We can help create a better world, a more compassionate world. We're opening ourselves to do just the same, to share with one another what avenues through the forest have worked for us, and be willing to listen to things that didn't sound like they worked for us, then they worked for others, just to acknowledge them. Difficult days lie ahead, and good ones too. I'm reminded that this is the anniversary weekend of the start of the so-called Freedom Convoy that surprised so many of us in its popularity and its vehemence. We have to be willing to listen, my friends. We have to be willing to listen. And to say our piece, we have to be in conversation. This is a great big world out there, and it needs what we can offer. Thank you. Thank you.
I see that our greeters and offering collectors are ready. This congregation has a long history of care, vitality, and bringing people together to move the arc of justice forward. We have been able to live into our hopes and dreams because of the generosity of those within and on this community. Perhaps the people who are doing the reflection can start now. Whether you are here in Worship Hall or anywhere else, you are part of this community. To make a gift in support of the work of this congregation, you don't need to use the baskets that are now beginning to make their way among our pews. Wherever you are invited to go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how to make a donation or keep up with your pledge. Our gifts are freely given and gratefully received. We dedicate these gifts to the work of this community of faith, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another. And now, please rise as you are willing and able to join together by closing hands before the witness altars. Lubo would hold and 64 and teal and hymnal.
Please be seated. Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our online fellowship hour will begin at 11:30. This morning, we extinguish our chalice. These words from Jane Breska. When all is quiet, and we are small, and the night is dark, may we hear the tender breathing of all who lie awake with us in fear, that together we may gather strength to live with love and kindness, and yes, even with confidence. This morning's chalice is extinguished. The spark of our connections and faith remain. Kurt, will you bless us once more? As now we return to the challenge, helping the world to come alive in love. Go in peace, my friends. Go in peace. Got it, thank you. What was the problem? I just saw the flag.
Well, right now, they can hear us. It's not through this that they're hearing the sound, it's through the computer microphone right now. So when I sent you that, I had to restart the computer and I just set everything back to default. And then Casey's like, we can hear things again, and it's not echoing. And I'm like, I think you're hearing my computer. And so I was like, Casey, can you hear? literally that low. And she's like, oh my god, yes, I can hear you. And I'm like, so yeah, I don't know. I basically tried to make it louder for people because they said it wasn't loud enough at home, right? And I changed the settings. I tried to make it louder, like the output louder,
Yeah.
and they're like,
Pictures of the screen on the phone.
and but basically I tried, but then it was like, no, now it's inaudible. There was a really bad echo. So like for up until I think Mary's reflection, it's basically inaudible. So. So I was struggling with that. I didn't know how bad it was, but it was like, no, it actually is inaudible. And I went to check the sound. We're like, okay, you're right. I don't know what's going on. So,
I realize conversation always been a challenge to me.
no, it's fine. Casey was messaging me all morning, and people came and were telling me, like,
Right.
there's something wrong. And I'm like, I know, I'm working on it.
Yeah. Thank you again.
Yeah.